Middle-class thinking is costing you millions, and the worst part is, you probably think you're doing everything right. You've followed the script, you've climbed the ladder, earned the respectable title, and curated the life that everyone else calls success. But beneath that polished surface, there is a quiet, suffocating reality. You're working harder than ever, yet your net worth is barely moving. You're trapped in a high-octane cycle of earning just to spend, performing for an audience that doesn't care, and mistaking looking rich for being wealthy. The truth is, your education and your need to belong have built a cage you didn't even realize you were living in. There is a specific, invisible habit that keeps you poor, and it's woven into the very neighborhood you live in, and the job you're afraid to leave. Most people will spend their entire lives sensing this frustration without ever naming it. They'll stop searching just as the real exit comes into view. But for those who can handle the raw truth about their own choices, a different path exists. One that requires a complete dismantling of how you see your status, your home, and your future. Before we dive in, I'm curious. Where are you listening from right now, and what time is it over there? Drop it in the comments. So, let's begin. We've all had that moment. Maybe it was Tuesday night, staring at a screen or stuck in a line at a coffee shop, where you look around and everything looks right. The cars in the parking lot are shiny. The clothes everyone is wearing look crisp, expensive. Even the houses we go home to, they have that specific, curated glow. But there's a quiet, heavy secret sitting in the passenger seat of those luxury SUVs. Thomas J. Stanley spent years looking behind the curtains of these perfect lives, and what he found wasn't a dream. It was a treadmill. A very expensive, very fast, high-octane treadmill. We've been taught to believe that if you make a lot of money and you spend a lot of money, you are, by definition, wealthy. But there is a massive, silent gap between looking wealthy and actually being wealthy. And most of us are currently drowning in that gap. Think about the high-octane life. It's the life where every raise is immediately eaten by a bigger mortgage. Every bonus is already spent on a watch that signals your success before you even feel successful. It's a strange kind of trap, isn't it? The middle-class mind is conditioned to treat income like fuel. You get the fuel and you immediately burn it to keep the engine loud and the lights bright. But when you burn all your fuel just to keep the car moving, you never actually arrive anywhere. You're just driving. Fast, in a circle. Stanley calls this high-income, low-net-worth survival. It sounds intense, and it is. It's the stress of a surgeon who makes $500,000 a year, but can't afford to miss a single month of work because the lifestyle, the private schools, the club memberships, the European vacations, requires every single cent of that $500,000 just to stay upright. It's a performance. A beautiful, exhausting performance for an audience that isn't even really watching. We tend to buy things to show people how well we're doing, people we don't particularly like. With money we haven't actually kept yet. There's a certain irony in it. We work 60 hours a week to afford a lifestyle that we're too tired to enjoy, all because we've confused consumption with achievement. The Millionaire Mind sees this differently. It recognizes that every dollar spent on a status symbol is a dollar that could have been an employee, working for you, earning for you, freeing you. When you prioritize the look of wealth, you are essentially taxing your own future. You're telling yourself that the opinion of your neighbor, who is likely just as stressed and over-leveraged as you are, is worth more than your own peace of mind. It's a habit, a deep-seated cultural habit. We see a luxury car and we think, that person is rich. We rarely think, that person just spent $80,000. One is an assumption of status. The other is a mathematical reality of depletion. Real wealth is the stuff you don't see. It's the money that stays in the bank. It's the assets that grow while you're sleeping. It's the quiet, boring, unglamorous independence that doesn't need a logo on the chest to feel valid. But the trap is seductive. It's built into the way our neighborhoods are designed, the way our social feeds are curated. It whispers that you're falling behind if you aren't upgrading. It tells you that successful people live like this. And so we keep fueling the high-octane engine. We keep trading our hours, our literal life force, for objects that lose value the moment we touch them. We've become experts at the art of looking like we've made it, while quietly wondering why we feel so precarious. Why the foundation feels so thin, even when the walls are covered in the finest paint. It makes you wonder where this script actually started. Because we weren't born wanting to trade our freedom for a hood ornament. Somewhere along the line, we were told that this was the path. That if we followed the rules, did the work, and climbed the ladder, the reward would be the ability to buy these things. And we believed it. We believed it so deeply that we stopped questioning the ladder itself. And who was holding it? Because most of us spent the first 20 years of our lives being told exactly how to climb by people who had never actually reached the top themselves. It's a bit of a cosmic joke, isn't it? We spend our most formative years in a system that rewards one thing above all else: the ability to follow directions. We learn that smart means getting an A on a test that someone else wrote. We learn that success is a gold star, a high GPA, and a seat at a prestigious university. We become, as Stanley puts it, label seekers. The data in the Millionaire Mind is actually kind of hilarious if you think about it. Most of the people with the highest net worths weren't the valedictorians. They weren't the ones the teachers pointed to and said, "There goes a future titan of industry." In fact, many of them were told they were average, or worse. But there's a danger in being a good student of the middle-class path. The traditional education system is essentially a factory for high-paid employees. It teaches you to be a specialist, a doctor, a lawyer, a corporate manager. It teaches you to be respectable. And respectability is the ultimate cage. When you spend your life being rewarded for coloring inside the lines, you develop a sort of intellectual allergy to risk. You become terrified of being wrong. You become addicted to the safety of the correct answer. But wealth, real, transformative wealth, doesn't live in the back of a textbook. It lives in the messy, uncurated spaces where there are no instructions. The middle-class trap is reinforced every time we prioritize a credential over a capability. We think that if we just get one more degree or one more certification, we'll finally be ready. We're looking for a permission slip from an institution to go out and create something. Meanwhile, the person who struggled in school, the one who couldn't sit still or didn't see the point in memorizing dates they could look up in 5 seconds, is out there failing and learning and failing again. They're building the courage muscles that the straight A student never had to develop. There's a quiet irony in the fact that the very system designed to prepare us for the real world often leaves us completely paralyzed by it. We've been conditioned to wait for someone to tell us it's our turn. We've been trained to seek out prestige because we think it's a shield against failure. But prestige is just another form of high-status consumption. It's an intellectual luxury car. If you're a high-paid professional, you're often just a very sophisticated label seeker. You've traded your creative autonomy for a title that sounds good at a cocktail party. You're following the academic path to a career that caps your income and consumes your time. all while convinced you're winning because you have the right letters after your name. The schooling system doesn't teach you how to be wealthy. It teaches you how to be useful to someone else who is. It rewards conformity. It prizes the correct process over the profitable result. And for those of us who did well in that system, it's a hard habit to break. It's hard to stop looking for the teacher's approval. We carry that need for validation into our 30s and 40s. We look for it in the prestige of the companies we work for and the respectability of our job titles. We're still trying to get that gold star, even though the person handing them out doesn't even know our name. We've been taught that being different is a liability, that being an outlier is a mistake that needs to be corrected in a parent-teacher conference. But you can't build a life that looks different from the majority if you're terrified of the majority's disapproval. You can't find the exits to the trap if you're too busy making sure you're standing in the middle of the line. It's a strange realization that the very traits that made us successful in a classroom are often the same ones keeping us financially stagnant in the real world. We're so busy being right that we've forgotten how to be free. And that need to belong, to fit the mold of the successful professional, doesn't just stay in the office. It follows us home. It decides where we live, what we drive, and who we think we have to be to keep the neighbors from noticing that we might actually be different. And that's where the trap really starts to tighten. Because the moment we decide we need to look the part, we stop being able to afford the life. It usually starts with a zip code. We tell ourselves it's for the schools or the commute or the resale value, and maybe on some level it is. But Stanley's research reveals a much colder truth. When you move into a prestigious neighborhood, you aren't just buying a house, you're buying a ticket to an endless high-stakes competition you didn't even realize you signed up for. It's called the weighted cost of status. If you live in a neighborhood where everyone drives a car that costs more than a year's tuition at a state college, you're going to find it very, very hard to keep parking your 5-year-old sedan in the driveway. Not because the car doesn't work, but because every time you pull in, there's this tiny, microscopic prick of social friction, a feeling that you're the poor one on the block. So, you upgrade. And then the house needs the right landscaping. The kids need the right summer camps. You need the right watch to wear to the neighborhood barbecue so people know you belong there, that you're a peer. The tragedy of the middle-class mind is that it values social standing over financial freedom. We spend our lives paying what is essentially a status tax. Every dollar that goes toward maintaining the image of success is a dollar that is snatched away from the reality of independence. Think about that for a second. We work ourselves to the bone to earn a high income, only to immediately hand that income over to the banks, the luxury car dealerships, and the private clubs, just so we can stay in a neighborhood filled with other people who are doing the exact same thing. It's a circle of people all pretending to be wealthy, while none of them actually are. Stanley found that the real millionaires, the ones with the millionaire mind, often live in middle-income neighborhoods. They live in houses that are below their means. They drive cars that are sensible, maybe even a little boring. Why? Because they realize something we haven't quite grasped yet. You cannot have both. You cannot maximize your consumption and maximize your wealth at the same time. They are two different directions. One is about looking out, making sure the world sees you as a winner. The other is about looking in, making sure you actually have the power to walk away from a job you hate or a boss you despise. But walking away is scary, and the prestige trap is designed to make it impossible. When your lifestyle is tuned to the absolute limit of your income, you are a prisoner. You might be a prisoner in a house with crown molding and a 3-car garage, but you're a prisoner nonetheless. You can't take a risk. You can't start that business. You can't even take a few months off to breathe because the status tax is due on the first of the month. We've traded our FU money for a look-at-me lifestyle, and it's exhausting. There's a quiet background hum of anxiety that comes with living this way. It's the feeling of being one bad performance review away from the whole house of cards coming down. We try to soothe that anxiety by buying more things, which only increases the tax, which only increases the anxiety. It's a perfect, closed loop. The middle-class trap convinces us that financial independence is something that happens someday, after the kids are out of school, after the house is paid off, after the next promotion. But for most of us, someday is a mirage that keeps receding into the distance, because our appetite for status grows faster than our bank account. We're afraid that if we stop playing the game, we'll be rejected. We're afraid that if we don't have the right things, we'll lose our seat at the table. But what if the table is in a room that's on fire? What if the very people we're trying to impress are actually drowning in the same debt, the same burnout, and the same quiet desperation? We spend so much energy trying to fit into a mold that was never meant to hold us. We're so worried about being normal that we've forgotten that, in modern America, normal is being broke, stressed, and one paycheck away from disaster. And yet, even knowing this, it's hard to let go. It's hard to be the person who chooses the smaller house or the older car. It takes a specific kind of internal strength to prioritize a bank statement over a neighborhood's approval. It takes courage, the kind of courage that doesn't show up in a boardroom or on a resume. It's the courage to be seen as average by people who don't matter, so that you can be truly extraordinary in the ways that do. But that gap, that space between who we are and who we think we need to be, is a lonely place to stand. And most people would rather be comfortably trapped than bravely alone, because standing apart feels a lot like failing until the results start to show. It's that courage gap that Stanley talks about. We think of courage as something cinematic, running into a burning building or staring down a lion. But in the world of wealth, courage is much quieter. It's the stomach-turning ability to be socially indifferent. It's the willingness to let your co-workers think you're having a rough year because you didn't upgrade your phone or your car or your kitchen. The middle class is trapped by a profound, soul-deep fear of social rejection. We are social animals after all. We want to be part of the tribe. And in our world, the tribe identifies its members by what they consume. If you don't wear the uniform, you aren't in the club. But here's the thing about the club. The Jews are killing you. Stanley's research into the millionaire mind found that one of the top success factors wasn't IQ or even a specific talent. It was the courage to be different. It's the ability to withstand the pressure of professional peers who expect you to live a certain way. Think about the career track. If you're a senior manager, there's an unspoken rule that you should look like a senior manager. If you're a lawyer, there's a script for how a lawyer spends their weekends. Following that script provides a sense of safety. It feels like stability. But that stability is an illusion. It's just a very well-decorated cage. True wealth creators are often people who have developed a thick skin regarding the opinions of others. They are okay with being the odd one out in the office. They are okay with the fact that their neighbors might think they're a little eccentric, or even a little cheap. They've realized that the risk of social rejection is a small price to pay for the reward of financial sovereignty. Most people in the middle class are terrified of professional failure, so they play it safe. They take the respectable jobs. They follow the proven paths. They do exactly what their education system trained them to do. They minimize risk. But you cannot accumulate significant wealth by minimizing risk. You accumulate it by managing risk. And managing risk requires the courage to walk away from the herd. It's the courage gap. On one side, you have the comfort of conformity, the warm, fuzzy feeling of being just like everyone else. On the other side, you have the cold, bracing air of independence. Most people stand at the edge of that gap their entire lives, peering across, but they never jump. They're too afraid of what people will say if they fall. They're too afraid of the silence that comes when you stop trying to impress everyone. There's a specific kind of irony in the way we view success. We admire the billionaire who dropped out of college or the entrepreneur who started a business in a garage, yet we spend every day making sure our own lives look as conventional and safe as possible. We worship the rule breakers from a distance while we double down on the rules in our own lives. We're scared that if we don't follow the middle-class blueprint, we'll end up with nothing. But the blueprint itself is designed to leave you with nothing. Or at least, nothing that actually belongs to you. It's designed to keep you productive and consuming until the day you retire. At which point, you realize you've spent 40 years building someone else's empire and paying for a lifestyle you were too stressed to enjoy. The Millionaire Mind understands that the greatest risk isn't being different. The greatest risk is being the same. Because if you do what everyone else does, you'll get what everyone else has. And right now, what everyone else has is a mountain of debt, a high-stress career, and a deep, nagging sense that they are missing the point of being alive. It takes a weird kind of bravery to look at a prestigious life and say, "No thanks, I'd rather be free." It's the courage to be misunderstood, to let people think you're less than because you aren't playing the status game. And that courage isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, one small no at a time. No to the luxury lease, no to the bigger house, no to the pressure to keep up. But even if you find that courage, even if you decide to jump the gap, you still have to deal with the reality of the leaky bucket. Because it's one thing to stop spending money on the outside world, but it's another thing entirely to manage the quiet, internal machinery of the life you've already built, which for most of us functions less like a fortress and more like a leaky bucket. You can work the 80-hour weeks. You can negotiate the raises. You can have the courage to drive the dented car. But if the bucket has holes in the bottom, the water level never actually rises. Stanley's research into these millionaires wasn't just about their jobs. It was about their kitchens. It was about their basements. He looked at the productive household, a term that sounds incredibly boring until you realize it's the literal engine of freedom. Most middle-class households are unmanaged and reactive. Money comes in and then it happens. It leaks out through subscription services you forgot you had, through premium groceries that rot in the crisper drawer, through the convenience tax of eating out because you're too exhausted from the high-octane job to boil a pot of pasta. It's 1,000 tiny cuts. We tend to think of wealth as a gross income problem. We think, if I just made 20,000 more, everything would change. But the productive household isn't about making more. It's about the internal operations. It's about being the CEO of your own living room. And this is where it gets a little uncomfortably personal. Building wealth isn't a solo sport. It's a team event. Stanley found that the most consistent factor in the lives of the Millionaire Mind wasn't a secret stock tip. It was a spouse who shared a wealth-building identity. In the middle-class trap, a spouse is often a co-consumer. You both work hard, so you both feel entitled to spend hard. You reward each other with things. You compete, maybe even subconsciously, to see who can provide the most status for the family unit. But a productive household operates on a different frequency. It's the person who knows that a dollar saved on the mundane, the insurance premiums, the heating bill, the sensible groceries, is a dollar that can be put to work in the real world. It's a partnership based on discipline rather than reactive spending. It sounds unromantic, doesn't it? To talk about wealth in terms of unmanaged household leakage? We want wealth to be a grand adventure. We want it to be a bold move on a trading floor. We don't want it to be about the fact that we're spending $400 a month on takeout because we haven't figured out how to meal prep. But that's the leaky bucket reality. The middle-class mind treats the home as a center of consumption, a place where we go to spend the money we earned elsewhere. The millionaire mind treats the home as a center of production. It's where the strategy happens. It's where the waste is eliminated. There's a quiet, understated wit in realizing that some of the wealthiest people in America spend more time auditing their phone bills than they do looking at their neighbors' new pools. They aren't cheap in the way we've been taught to fear. They're just intentional. They understand that wealth is built in the margins. If your life is unmanaged, you are essentially working for the utility companies, the streaming platforms, and the restaurant chains. You are the middleman between your employer's bank account and theirs. You're just a pass-through entity. Plugging the leaks requires a shift in identity. It requires you to stop seeing yourself as a consumer and start seeing yourself as an owner. An owner doesn't tolerate a leaky bucket. An owner knows that every drop of water represents a piece of their time, a piece of their life, that they can never get back. It's about taking the power back from the reactive, I deserve this culture and putting it into the I own this reality. It's realizing that the most productive thing you can do for your future isn't necessarily finding a new side hustle, but simply managing the household you already have with the precision of a business. Because if you can't manage a small bucket, you have no business asking for a larger one. We've been conditioned to think that managing money is something only rich people do. But the truth is exactly the opposite. Rich people are often rich because they were the ones managing the money when there wasn't much of it to go around. They looked at the unattractive parts of life, the boring, daily, unglamorous logistics of a household, and they found the profit hidden in the cracks. And once you stop being a pass-through entity for your own paycheck, you start to look at your career a bit differently too. You start to see that prestige is often just another hole in the bucket, one that you've been told to keep open just so people think you're important. But that importance is often a trap in itself, a golden handcuff forged from the need to look respectable to people we don't even like. We've been sold this idea that certain careers are better than others. We're told that being a corporate executive, or a consultant, or a specialized surgeon is the peak of the mountain. And sure, those jobs pay well, but they also come with a hidden, heavy tax, the tax of reputation. When you choose a respectable profession, you are often entering a world of capped potential and high social overhead. You have to maintain the image. You have to live in the right zip code. You have to follow the rules of the hierarchy. You're essentially buying a high-priced ticket to stay on the treadmill we've been talking about. Stanley's research into the millionaire mind revealed something that feels almost like a prank on the middle class. A massive number of the truly wealthy didn't choose the glamorous paths. They chose the dull ones. They are the owners of waste management companies, the people who manufacture specialized drill bits, the ones who run commercial dry cleaning chains or niche welding businesses. They chose vocation over reputation. They looked at the market and asked, where is there a need that no one else wants to touch because it's not cool enough for a LinkedIn post? They found the unglamorous, gritty, boring niches where the competition is thin and the profit margins are thick. In these niches, No one cares if you drive a 10-year-old truck. No one cares if you live in a modest house in a normal neighborhood. There is no status tax because there is no status to maintain. There is only the work, the value, and the freedom that comes with owning the outcome. The middle-class mind is terrified of these jobs. We're afraid of what our parents would say at Thanksgiving if we told them we were starting a plumbing supply business instead of taking that prestigious marketing director role. We're afraid of being the person with dirt under our fingernails in a room full of manicured hands. But that fear, that courage gap we felt earlier, is the only thing standing between us and a life where we aren't constantly performing for an audience. When you prioritize vocation, you're looking for profitability and market demand. You're looking for a way to be useful, not a way to be admired. And there is a profound, quiet power in being the millionaire next door who everyone assumes is just another guy working a blue-collar job, while in reality, he owns the block. As you start to look at it this way, the whole landscape begins to shift. The middle-class trap isn't just one thing. It's not just the house you can't afford or the degree you're still paying for. It's a tapestry of choices we made because we were told they were the right ones. We see the high-octane consumption for what it is, a desperate attempt to feel successful before we actually are. We see the schooling system as the place where we learn to value the gold star more than the creative risk. We see the leaky bucket of our households and the status tax of our neighborhoods as the invisible anchors holding us back from the life we actually want. It's all connected. The need to conform, the fear of being different, and the exhausting pursuit of a reputation that doesn't actually buy you anything but more work. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. The pressure to fit in starts to feel a little lighter. The urge to buy that thing to impress that person starts to feel a little more ridiculous. You realize that the only person you've been trying to convince of your worth is yourself. And you've been trying to do it with props instead of presence. Wealth isn't about the millions. It's about the mind. It's about the internal shift from being a performer to being a person who is truly, deeply independent. It's about the peace that comes when you stop caring if the world thinks you're winning and start making sure that you actually are. It's a long walk from the middle-class mindset to the millionaire one. It's not a path of more stuff. It's a path of more truth. I'm curious, as you've been listening to this, sitting there with your own thoughts, does any of this feel familiar? Have you felt that status tax in your own life? Or maybe you've already started plugging the leaks in your own bucket. I'd love to hear your story in the comments. It's where we all realize we're not as alone in this as we thought. And if this conversation meant something to you today, it would mean a lot to the channel if you liked the video or subscribe to join us for the next one. It's a small thing, but it helps us keep these quiet truths moving forward. Take care of yourself. And maybe let the bucket leak a little less tomorrow.